let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. And in the chat, I've sent a link to Google Form, so please fill that out to get extra credit points. And I talked to the biology professors, and it seems like they're willing to offer 5 extra credit points for coming to 5 live streams. Any questions regarding that? Okay, we can go ahead and get started. So today we'll be looking at what effects selections can have on population. So the first question is saying, what effects can have natural selections have on population? For example, what type of selection can occur in a population and how are they defined? Does anyone have any idea for what effects natural selection can have on a population? Or what type of selections there are? Okay, so selection can be either directional, stabilizing, or disruptive. So if selection removes individuals that show extreme forms of phenotype characteristics, then the mean for the characteristics can appear to move in a more positive or a more negative direction, and that is what directional stabilization looks at. Another form of selection is when two selections act on both extreme end, and that will appear to stabilize around the mean. So it doesn't want anything that's too low or too high, so it tends to go towards the mean. And then for directional, it can either go towards this way or this way. And then for if the selection acts against the mean, then it can lead to polymorphism in a population and can lead to disruptive selection. So that's where it goes this way and this way. So the difference between directional and disruptive is directional is either going to the left or either going to the right, whereas disruptive is just going away from the middle, so it goes in both directions. So some graphs that you might have seen for this is that in disruptive, the graph might look kind of like this, where it's going this way and this way, but this trait is being selected against. Then in stabilizing, you're coming more towards the mean. And then in directional, it can either be like this, or it can either be like that. Okay, any questions on that so far? Okay, so today we're going to be mainly looking at different types of scenarios, and we're going to decide whether natural selection is occurring or not, and what's variable in the population. So if we say that there is no selection, then we're going to look at, does that imply that there is evolution? And if yes, then we're going to try to identify what is the nature of the variation and what variation is being selected for or against. And then we're also going to see if there are any indication for the members of the population to have different fitness. And if they don't, then we're going to look at what does that imply, and if yes, we're going to talk about what the difference in fitness is going to do, whether that's going to select for natural selection or against it. And then for part C, um, we are going to decide what the characterize the future behavior of the population is going to be. So the key to analyzing these scenarios is to first ask what is being selected against, and then whether or not this phenotype or trait could have a genetic basis. So we're going to think about, can this be genetically inherited? And if it's genetically inherited, then you're likely to see selection. So for the scenarios we're going to look at, we're going to ask, is it genetically inherited? And if the answer is yes, it's usually that we will see selection. And once we determine that there is selection, then we're going to talk about what type of selection that is. And that's what we talked about in the first question, whether that's directional, stabilizing, or disruptive. Okay, so here's scenario one. A particular species of mouse feeds on the seed of a single species of cherry tree. When the mice eats a seed, they digest it completely. The mice choose seeds of intermediate and large sizes, leaving the very small seeds of the cherry tree uneaten. So, so part A, we're going to decide if selection is occurring or not. So, what do you guys think? Do you guys think in this scenario that selection would occur or would not occur? Yes, good job. Selection is occurring. Because we know that there is a variation in cherry seed size and that they prefer a particular size over the other. We know that um, one is favored over the other, and the seed sizes are inheritable trait. Yeah, that's a good point. The comment says the small seeds are more likely to get left behind and germinate. Okay, so what are the mice selecting against in this? So we know that they're selecting against the very large and the intermediate seed sizes. Like the comment said, they're getting left behind, so they're more likely to germinate. So if they're eating the intermediate and large size, then they're selecting against that. Okay, so if the selection occurs, oh, let's see. Is the text better now? Okay, maybe for the next stream, I will try to do it on a different device to see if I can improve the resolution, but glad that it's better after zooming in a little bit. Okay, so for part C, we're gonna think about what is gonna happen long term. So if these mice keep eating the intermediate and large sizes and they leave behind the small ones, then over time, are we gonna see in the future generation, are we gonna see cherry trees that are gonna produce more small size seeds or big size seeds? Yes, that's correct. They will produce more small size seeds. And here's a graph that's depicting what can happen to the cherry seeds over 10 seasons. So we can see that the medium and the large are declining throughout the season, whereas the small seeds are increasing throughout the season. Um, Comment says, I'm trying to familiarize myself with this format of delivery and I'm getting caught up. Sorry for the late response. Oh, no worries at all. Yeah, I'm still trying to get used to this, like running a Twitch stream and also using my iPad to write on it. So yeah, feel free to let me know if I can improve in any way as well. All right, let's look at the second scenario. A small island egg contains three separate populations of a single species of cherry tree. The seed sizes vary between trees. That is, some trees produce seeds that are all in the small size range, and others produce seed all in the middle size range, and others produce seeds in the large size range. A small population of mice is introduced to the island. The mice eat cherries and are the only predators on the cherry tree. When the mice eat a cherry, they completely digest it and the pit and the seed inside it. The mice choose medium and large seeds and leave the smallest uneaten. I feel like this question is very similar to the other one. Let's see. Yeah, so maybe we can skip this one because it it's very similar except that they have three different island groups. But yeah, the answers are going to be the same. So since the mice is choosing for the medium and large seeds, the trees producing the small uneaten seeds are going to reproduce more throughout time. Let's see the comments. Would I be able to view this as well later? Um, yeah, so what we're trying to do is this will be recorded and it'll be on my stream page. So if you follow me, you can come back later and watch the videos that I have recorded. And we're also trying to get it uploaded to YouTube and as well as like give access to your professors. So pretty soon you'll have different ways to access these videos. But yeah, for now, they will definitely be on my stream page. Okay, let's look at this part. So as you continue to study the population of trees, you note that the viability of the seeds varies the size such that the viability of the small seed is less than of that of the middle seed, which is less than of the largest seed. Is it better to read now or? I don't think the document is on D2L, but I can definitely ask the biology professors to see if they're willing to upload it on D2L so you guys can fill it out with me. So yeah, I'll definitely email them about it. Okay, so yeah, I think filling it out and as I'm working it out, or even trying to see if you can get to the answer as well would be really helpful. Okay, so in this scenario, is selection occurring? So similar to the last question, because there is a genetic component and there is a variation in seed sizes, we can assume that selection is occurring. And seed size is a heritable trait. And the question says that the individual seeds differ in their fitness, so the mice are selecting against the large and the middle seed, and only the small seeds are not getting eaten. Yeah, exactly. So this is a little bit tricky because the small seeds are not getting eaten. However, the large seeds are the ones that are more likely to survive. So yes, your comment was right about how large seeds are more likely to survive. So yeah, large seeds. So the difference between this scenario and the one we just looked at is that in the other scenario, it was saying that small seeds are not getting eaten. So the smaller the small seed is, the better it is for the survivability of that seed. However, in this scenario, they're telling us that the larger the seed is, the better off it is at surviving. So we want the largest of the small seeds because the large seeds are already getting eaten and the medium-sized seeds are already getting eaten. So out of the small seeds, the larger ones of those seeds are the ones that are more likely to survive. And in this scenario, we need to consider both the effect of the mice and the difference in relative fitness. Any questions about this scenario? Okay, let's go on to the next scenario. Small island B contains, oh, are they, I feel like all these are repeated for some reason. Yeah, so we can skip that one. And okay, so here's kind of the graph of the seed abundancy over time. So we see that the medium-sized seeds and the large size seeds are kind of fluctuating all around because large seeds are more likely to reproduce, but they're also more likely to be eaten. So they fluctuate a lot more. And then we see the small seeds are also fluctuating, but not at the greatest length of the larger seeds. Okay, so as we continue to study these population, you you know that the viability of the seeds do not vary with size. Over time, however, you find that the trees that grow from the smallest seeds produce fewer larger seeds. Okay, so this information right here gives us additional evidence that seed size is heritable. Can we read the third cherry tree question again so we can see why the graph changed? Yes. Okay, so this is a continuation problem. So in the last scenario, this is what we're given. We're given that a small island contains three separate populations of a single species of cherry tree, but the seed size varies between the trees. And then it's telling us that um, there are small range seeds, mid range seeds, and large range seeds. And then it's telling us that the mice introduced to that island only eat that cherry and they choose the medium and the large seeds uneaten. So if this was the only information we were given, our graph would look something like this. Because the small seeds are not eaten, so they're more likely to survive, and the medium and the large seeds would continuously decline throughout time. But they give us this additional information right here, which says that the small seed is less fit than the smaller, or sorry, the small seeds are less likely to develop than the large seeds. So that's what it's saying here. The viability of the small seed is a lot lower, even though they're not being eaten by the squirrel. So because of that added information, we get this graph. Did that help clear your question on why the graph looks a little different than it did before? And there's a lot of fluctuation here as well because genetics was not the only thing that was um, contributing to the the increase in seed number. Uh, you were trying to see what 3A was saying. Yeah, 3A is the same scenario as the one I just read earlier. So it's saying the same thing that there's medium, small, and large size seeds, and the mice only eat the medium and large and leave the small seeds uneaten. So it's the same scenario we've been looking at. Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, let's go back to 3B. Yeah, just a quick refresher. So we're looking at the same population again, but we are noticing that the viability of the seeds are not varying with size. But over time, we find that the tree grow from smallest seeds produce fewer large seeds. So this additional information provides evidence that seed size is heritable and not a result of growth condition because it's saying that small seeds produce fewer large seeds, which means that small seeds tend to produce smaller seeds. So we know that this is a heritable trait. And similar to the last scenarios we've been looking at, the small seeds are going to be able to survive more. And then over time, this would lead to more small seeds. Okay, let's look at scenario 4. After a severe spring ice storm, about half of the finches in a population are found dead. Examination of the dead bird indicates that they vary in age from young to old. About 60% are left in the nest, 20% are over the age of 3. Okay, so part A, we're going to look at whether this is due to whether there is selection or not. So what do you guys think? I would argue that there is not a selection in this scenario because the vast majority of the dead birds are young and very old, and individuals in these age categories are less able to survive based on their experience. So these characteristics are not necessarily genetic differences than than the population that survived. Does that make sense? So the young birds need help from their mom up to a certain age, right? And then the older birds are more likely to die just because of older age. So there is no heritable trait that's making one more likely to survive. So there is no selection. Yes, exactly. So the comment says selection occurs on genetic differences, not on lifestyle. Yep. Uh, what about size and ability to stay warm slash etc.? Yeah, so that's a really great question. But so so let's look at size first. So you're asking the smaller birds are a lot smaller, so why is it, and that's a heritable trait, so why is that not affecting here? But but in order to look at the effect of size, you need to look at just the babies to see if the bigger baby birds are surviving more or if the smaller baby birds are surviving more. But when but in development, all the baby birds are going to be smaller than the adult birds. So that's why size is not considered here. Does that make more sense? Okay, so we're going to say no selection because these characteristics are not based on genetic differences. Okay, so if this were selection, then it would be against the young and the old ages, and if we took this to extreme, we could even argue that over time, each generation would have more middle-aged individuals compared to the number of young individuals, because middle-aged individuals must at one time have been young. So that's why it doesn't make logical sense. So let's assume that this is selection and that we're selecting for middle-aged birds. It doesn't make sense because the middle-aged birds would have had to be a young bird at one point. So if young birds are selected against, then it doesn't make sense how middle-aged birds could be selected for when they're selected against when they're babies. And then without like further information, um, to indicate that one specific type of young and old bird die, we cannot say that genetic selection had occurred. So we would expect to see no significant changes in the genetics of this population over time. Um, and also we can see that it's after like a severe spring ice storm, which is a catastrophe. So the young and the old that are already like the vulnerable population ended up suffering more. But once they pass this ice storm, it's not going to affect the survivability of the young or the old too much from how it normally would be. Did that scenario make sense? Any other questions or thoughts regarding that? Okay, let's move on to part 3. So we're going to be looking at a figure that's showing a distribution of phenotypic characteristic in a population, and they split it up into A, B, and C for the distribution, and um, and we're gonna use this set of key to answer the question. So we're gonna choose whether it's gonna affect portion A, portion B, C, or AB or BC. So let's look at some example questions. So for this, we're going to determine whether that portion of the population will be selected against or least likely to have their genes presented in the next generation. Okay, so male sticklebacks with bright red coloring are favored by female sticklebacks as mates. However, the bright red color makes the male more likely to be seen by the predators. So, based on this graph, um, what do you think, what part of the graph do you think will be affected the most? Okay, so the best answer for this question would be, yeah, that's a good answer. In the comment it says A/C. Yeah, so the best answer would be D, which says portions A and C would be simultaneously affected because the bright males are favored but are also most preyed upon. So it helps them pass their genetic material on, but at the same time, they're at a greater risk. So organisms that will be selected against are the brightest and easiest to catch, and over time, the least colorful will not be able to find a mate. So it'll be selected against the brightest. Okay, next question. On island Z in Galapagos, the plant population contains only two species. One of the two plant species was B the brightest in the graph? No, so so this side is low or less and over C is really bright. So this side, so A is not bright. B is semi-bright, and C would be most bright. The reason that it's selecting against A and C is because these will get eaten really fast. Because they're super bright, they're going to get eaten really fast. So these population will die over time. And then part A is not the brightest. These are not going to be able to find mates, so no mating. So these will die off. So B is what you're going to start producing in later generation. But the questions are asking which one they'll be selected against. So C and A will be selected against. Yes, the y-axis is the percent of population. Percent found in population. Okay. Yeah, the x-axis is vague, but I think because the graph is being used for all the questions that we're going to be looking at, they didn't want to define it because for each question it's going to be a different axis. So maybe to make it clear, we can write um, maybe low or less expression, and then maybe high expression here. The comment says, and this is stabilizing selection. Yes, you're right. Because it's going towards the mean of the population, this is a stabilizing selection. All right, so back to the Galapagos problem. So one of the two plant species produce very large seeds, and the other produces small seeds. A species of seed-eating finch has lived on the island for many years. Members of this established species have large beaks and prefer large seeds. A small population of different species of seed-eating finches have migrated to the island. The beak size in the new population varies over a continuum from relatively small to large. So how will evolution of new finch species be affected? So again, we can look back at this graph, and the best answer would be C, portion C, but portion B of the phenotype may be affected as well, just because the beak size varies. They're small, medium, and large. So the individuals in the new finch species with large beaks will be selected against because they'll be in direct competition with the already existing finch. Um, so yeah, so there in the island there were already finches who ate bigger seeds. So the new population, which has a continuum, small, medium, and big, the biggest one will be selected against because you already have animals that live on that island with big beaks. So that just increases the competition more. So C will be selected against. So it's going to tend to prefer mid-size seeds and smaller size seeds when the new finch of the generation are growing. So here we can say, oops. Okay. Next scenario. In a species of plant-eating land snails, the shell color is variable and ranges from light to intermediate to very dark in color. The snails are preyed upon by birds that use sight to find prey. So this tells us like color is going to affect their ability to survive. And it says a small population of snail is moved to an island where the food plant in their preferred habitat are either light in color or very dark. So it's saying, here we need to find, or we're going to want to prefer snails that can camouflage because there are the birds that eat them. So the snails that cannot camouflage are gonna most likely be seen and eaten. So according to this graph, we will be selecting against portion B only because the intermediate snails will not be able to camouflage with either the dark or the light food. Um, that's because here it says they're either very light in color or very dark, and that's the type of food that's in their habitat. So we're gonna see a selection that kind of looks like this. So this is disruptive selection. So this would be light and dark. And these the dark can camouflage in the dark colored setting, the light can camouflage in the light colored setting, but the ones in the middle cannot hide. So we tend to see this dip in the population. Okay, that is the last scenario for today. Is there any questions you guys had in general or any specific questions? So in question B, when you say competition, you mean competition for mates, not food, right? Um, yeah, so in part B, we're looking at the seed sizes. So yes, more competition when it comes to food. Wait, sorry, I misheard the question. You're saying you mean competition for mates, not food, right? No, sorry, I do mean competition for food because the beak size do not have, so in the question, it's not saying that bigger beak size means they're more likely to mate. So it's competition for food because if say that there are birds with large beaks that already have their established place to eat. So if you have large beaks, then you have to compete with the other birds that have large beaks to like either fight for the food. So they're gonna try to um, have either medium-sized beak or small-sized beak so they can eat in different areas of their environment. No, thank you though. This was my first time attending this and I like them. Please have the instructor place the worksheet on D2L and I think I can get more out of it. Yeah, thank you for that comment and suggestion. I will definitely email the professors after the session and ask if it's possible to have the worksheets up. Another comment says, did someone say this will be posted on D2L? So yeah, that was the idea. I will double check on that because I know they're posting it on YouTube and it's going to be on my Twitch profile page. So I don't know if they thought it would be too redundant to post it on D2L or not, but I'll definitely find out where they'll be posted and get you guys the resources to be able to access that. And people that showed up today, make sure to fill out the Google Sheet link that I put up because that's how I'm going to be counting attendance from now on. So the points will only be given if you guys attend the live session, but you can watch the recorded one anytime as well if you're not able to make it to one of them. Yeah, no problem. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to the second stream. I will contact the professors and try to get the sheets and figure out where they'll be posted and get back to you guys. And I hope to see you all next week. Thank you. Yeah, I did record the attendance for the first week, but the only problem was I don't think everyone gave me their attendance, so I think I'm only able to count those who commented on the first live stream. But from now on, it'll be for sure counted. Yeah. But I remember specifically I counted your attendance for the first stream because you put your email, so you're good. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And thanks for interacting through the chat and answering or asking questions. That's really helpful to make it more interactive and fun. All right, you guys have a great week. I'll see you guys next week.